Welcome back. Last video talked about the European empires of the world at 1500. This video we're going to talk about Africa, the Americas, and maybe a little bit of the Middle East depending on how long it lasts. So in Africa, we're talking about the Songhai Empire. At this point in 1500, they've taken over from the Mali. They're centered around the Niger River. Okay, this is going to be, their capital is Gao, G-A-O, but they've also taken over Timbuktu. So a little bit more about the Songhai. They are located at the end of the Saharan trade routes. Okay, remember those are the gold salt trade routes. Gold is very important for money. Salt is very important for preserving food. It's also important for flavoring food. And it gets to a point where salt can be used as currency or is worth as much as gold to the Europeans. Songhai Empire are Muslim. Remember, the Muslim faith moves across North Africa and through the trade routes down into the Songhai Empire. They're going to import horses for the army. Originally, their method of transportation was camels. And camels are important, especially because of the Sahara Desert. Camels can hold water for up to 3 days, so they don't have to stop and drink. Horses aren't that great for trade, but camels don't move very fast. So they bought the horses for the army. Now, because of the trade routes, we're going to see towns and cities grow in the Songhai Empire. They're not going to stay in the little villages that you think of with most African tribal societies. They're actually forming cities, the most famous of which is Timbuktu, and that's going to grow. We see our probable trade routes of the Sahara Desert. We don't actually know official routes of them, like we can't find a latitude and a longitude for each of the routes because of the desert and its shifting sands, and there aren't really many artifacts left to help us uncover that. But this is probably where they went. Now in the Americas, remember you can stop and pause the video at any time, rewind if you need to. In the Americas, we're going to talk about the Aztecs and the Incas. At this point in time, the Maya have been mostly taken over by the Aztecs. There are some independent Maya villages, but they're not that important, and they get taken over. They're not very strong at this point. So mainly the Aztecs and the Incas. Now, both of the empires that we're going to talk about are complex, advanced civilizations. They both form calendars. And by this, we don't mean oh, hey, the weather's changing and it's going to be a new season. We mean month, day, year calendars like we use today. And they both develop very distinct architecture, which we're going to talk about for each group. Both are also conquered by the Spanish conquistadors that arrive after Columbus, looking for gold and slaves and more land for them to conquer, make money. And that's going to be really important down the road in our fourth unit about exploration. So first off, the Aztecs. They're located in modern-day Mexico. The Aztecs are actually, the tribal name of the Aztecs are the Mexica, which is how we get the name Mexico. And their capital is located at Tenochtitlan, which is the picture up in the upper right corner. It's basically started out on an island in the middle of a lake, and then it grew out from there. In the middle of the city, they have their sun temple, okay, worshiping the god in the emperor's palace, and then it's a pretty advanced, very wealthy city all around that. So we know they're an empire. They are polytheistic, which means they have many gods. They have a god of the sun, they have a god of war, they have a goddess of the harvest, all those kinds of things that they worship. They practice what is called Chinampas Agriculture. Okay, this is the floating agriculture that they set up around Tenochtitlan and along the edges of the lake in central Mexico. They're also going to practice human sacrifice. You can see in the picture in the bottom right, where it's not just we're cutting off the head of someone to sacrifice them or we're burning them at the stake like in European practices, but we're actually putting someone out on a temple platform and cutting open their chest and taking out their beating heart. They believe that is how they get favor from the gods and increase the strength of their empire. Now, the conquistador that's going to take over the Aztecs is going to be Cortez. We'll talk a lot more later on in Unit 4, our exploration unit, about how Cortez takes them over. But basically, he is able to get into Tenochtitlan. He captures their emperor, and within a couple days, he has taken over the entire empire. Now, Chinampas Agriculture, here's a picture. Okay, you can see the two gentlemen at the bottom are weaving the mats that then get created into this floating platform, and then they put soil on top of it, and that's what they plant on. Okay, this is how they grow all of their crops for feeding their capital city. The Inca are going to be located in modern-day Peru, high up in the Andes Mountains. Their capital is Cuzco. You've probably heard that name before if you've seen The Emperor's New Groove. But the more famous city from the Inca is Machu Picchu, which is the picture in the lower right-hand corner. Machu Picchu, they think, was an estate for the emperor. It was left intact, it was abandoned before the Spanish arrived, and so the Spanish never found it. If they had found it, it would have been completely plundered, it would have been completely demolished, and we would have no idea anything about Incan architecture. But because of Machu Picchu, it was discovered in 1911, and we're able to see how the Inca created essentially earthquake-proof architecture, or earthquake-proof houses. They took stones and interlocked them like a puzzle, not really using a lot of mortar, so that when the earthquake happens, the building moves with the ground and doesn't fall over, which is pretty cool. Like the Aztecs, the Inca are polytheistic. They have very similar gods, but different names for them, just kind of like the Greeks and the Romans have similar gods, but different names. And they practice what we call terrace or step farming. Sorry about the fire truck going past. So the Inca practice terrace or step farming, which means they're carving out parts of the mountainside. I have a picture on the next slide for you. And that way they're able to grow things. They are a full, very long and narrow empire throughout the mountains. They build roads to connect the different parts of the empire that they conquer. And they put garrisons along these roads, or army posts. So that way they can protect the travelers and their messengers as they move from city to city and village to village. The Inca are going to be conquered by Pizarro, the conquistador, and again, we'll talk about him a little bit later. But our picture of terrace farming, you can see how they've carved out the mountainside in the background to look more like the foreground, where you have the flat surface that's green, that has stuff growing on it, and then the stone walls. And you can see examples of Incan houses here. There's a ruined one without a roof, and then 3 roofs, thatched roofs. And the little dots on the green, the grass, are llamas. The Inca are known for raising and growing llama, and then they use the wool to make their clothing. So that's Africa and the Americas. Let's jump into the Middle East. When we say the Middle East, we're thinking of a part of North Africa, meaning Egypt, and part of Asia, Turkey, Syria, Arabia, okay, surrounding the Red Sea, Persian Gulf, Black Sea, and the Mediterranean. Now, our first empire is going to be the Ottomans. They dominate the areas around the Eastern Mediterranean. They last for a very, very long time. In 1432, they are going to conquer Constantinople, which is a major city along the Silk Road. So they renamed this city Istanbul, because whenever you want to conquer something, you want to rename it so that way it is different from the past. Now, when they conquer Constantinople, it proves that they have a very strong army and navy, but it also means that they disrupt the trade routes, or the Silk Road, from Europe to the Middle East and Asia, which means that any of the merchants going through have to pay a toll. See our little picture. Now, what does that mean for prices of the goods in Europe? Well, the prices are going to rise. Are the Europeans happy about that? No, of course not. They don't want to pay any more money for all of these spices and fancy fabrics in China that they can't get because they don't have ways to make it themselves. So, conquering Constantinople and having to pay a toll is going to lead directly to the Portuguese and the Spanish trying to figure out another way to get to the Far East, Spice Islands, China, India, without having to go through the Ottoman Empire. That leads us to Christopher Columbus down the road. What are they trading? Well, the Ottomans are famous for Turkish coffee. Okay, they bring it out of Syria. It's a very spicy coffee, not like what your parents would drink in America today, unless they drink Turkish coffee. And they're also famous for their Ottoman ceramics, where they use very floral designs and trade them all over the world. They don't put a lot of people on them because of the Islamic religion. The Ottomans are Islamic, and they are going to not believe in putting pictures like the Prophet Muhammad. Here's a map of the Ottoman Empire at 1580. They're going to start in this area called Anatolia, where Turkey is today. Constantinople sits on the Bosphorus Strait, which connects the Black Sea to the Mediterranean Sea, and is exactly where the Silk Road ends and leads up into Europe. Okay, they also have Egypt, they have Hungary, and what is today Yugoslavia, and Bulgaria, and Romania, and all of those areas. They also have control of Baghdad, modern-day Iraq, so they've got a pretty big empire. All right, we're going to leave off here. This video is 11 minutes long already, and we will do a third video for the rest of the Middle East and Asia. See you in a bit.